WNS on sale now at WNST.net. You can throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. That is June the 9th. But amidst all of this, the backdrop of Oriole baseball as it moves to Chicago and then to Tampa over the weekend, it has been a month since I have chatted with Alan McCallum, and what a month it has been. A month ago, Alan, I think we felt like the season was getting off the rails quickly, and here we enter Chicago, and the only story is, hey, you going to trade Manny Machado to the Cubs?
No, there's some other stories, but, ultimately, this season seems to have ended before it began. It's a shame. I know we were all excited when they signed Cobb and Cashner, and, I believe that I said at the time that I thought that they still should have traded off as much as they could have to start over and entered this season as a young club trying to start over. But that I thought they had enough talent with the pitching to sort of be the best of the also-rans. And, I feel like a combination of injuries to a couple of key players and having to go up against the best teams in the game largely through the month of April and the bad weather really killed this team early on. They took 5 out of 6 against Kansas City and Tampa, and it sort of read the way I felt like it would. Like they have enough talent when everybody's healthy to sort of sneak into the number 2 wild card spot, which basically means you're a game or two over 500 usually. But the combination of the things really killed them, and they're not going to get any better at this point. So, along with trading Manny Machado, it seems to me the thing they need to do is make the decision to tear this thing up as best they can and start giving some young guys a shot. And, I've got to be honest, I don't feel like that they're really embracing that yet. And that's something that this organization, from the leadership and from Buck Showalter's perspective and how he manages the team, that they need to do, because until they do that, everything that happens is just futile at this point.
In trading Machado, there needs to be a market, right? And obviously one of the best players in the game, and what exactly is a rental? I guess it's like when banks compete, you win, right? Right now, yeah, the Cubs, I guess. We thought the Dodgers would be involved. Maybe the last time you and I got together, right around the time Seager got hurt, and they have fallen apart. I don't know who the other bidders are. And then there's the eternal question of who pulls that trigger for the Orioles. Is that Brady Anderson's call at the end of the day? Is that John Angelo's? Who decides what group of Addison, Russell, and prospects is going to be sufficient to get a deal done, and at what point is that going to happen?
Yes, certainly all the stories have come out now about the factionalism that's happening within the organization, when and how people had power, lost power, influenced the leaders. Angelos has fallen away due to poor health. His son's taking over. You hear a lot of references to Game of Thrones, and it really does sort of feel that way.
I don't know anything about Game of Thrones, but I'm sure it's accurate.
Aside from the murder and pillaging, it's probably not too far away, right? Look, I've blamed a lot of stuff on Dan Duquette, and if that is, whether that's true or not, I will say this: if his loss of power began when he tried to get out of his contract and go to Toronto, then I still feel like a lot of this is on him. And some of the decisions that have happened both before that and after that, you can certainly feel his fingerprints on some of them. I don't know whether Brady Anderson can be a general manager or not. I know that Brady is an intelligent man and knows the game, and I believe that he has the ability to work within an organization. Whether or not he's general manager material is something that remains to be seen. Nobody really knows that until they do it. That said, if what the insinuation is that Brady likes the big moves and doesn't really concern himself with the small moves, well, that's not what a general manager does. A general manager has to be involved with all facets. If you delegate that to someone who has the eye and makes those moves, then sure, I guess that could work as long as you're on the same page. Scouting is something this team has not spent a ton of money on and something they desperately need. both international and domestic, and all of these things need to happen. Is Brady the man to do it? I honestly don't know.
Well, he's been a part of something completely half-assed. And if he's on the inside of it and thinks that this thing has integrity with, 2 or 1.5 analytics experts when the Cubs have 20, when the Rays have 20, that this is okay, saying we're not going to assign players of color or who don't speak the language or live in Korea or Japan or Venezuela or the Dominican because we don't like foreign things around here because the old man's a nationalist. I don't know how you get through that other than, Buck signed up for this. And by the way, I'm getting a little chippy with them in last place, and I'm going to have a little time on my hands next month watching the World Cup that we're also not involved in, by the way, as United States of America. So I'm going to be writing some Dear Orioles notes during the month, but it really is astonishing how all of the people involved in this have signed up and signed on to something that, quite frankly, has as much credibility as a Sarah Huckabee Sanders press conference or a Kelly Conway sit-down. The whole thing has no integrity because they come into it and know it's not normal. It's not being run the right way. But my paycheck, cashes, and I'll be a part of that. There's nothing about the organization that's normal or like anywhere else, and the people inside of it either don't know it because they haven't been anywhere else, or there's somebody like Buck Showalter who signed up for it and said, well, I'm willing to work in an unorthodox system here.
Well, look, there are a couple things. I mean, first, clearly their approach to international scouting, drafting, and development is just absurd. The 1950s approach to that is ludicrous, and they will be behind everybody as long as that's the perspective that they have. Let's just get that out of the way.
Well, you would say they will never win unless they get involved in that. Like especially if they're not going to spend money on free agents, they will never win.
And that's the thing, right? I mean, this is an organization that has been known as miserly, and they've gotten away from that to some degree. But I mean, that's certainly the approach that seems to govern some of the budget, and a lot of that can be solved in the international market. There's certainly a tremendous amount of talent. If the pool you're dipping your feet in is 40% smaller than everybody else's, then you have a smaller group of talent to find. I mean, that's just the math of the situation. And then the second thing is loyalty. Look, I understand that you want to be loyal to the players that have gotten you there and that you want to give them a chance. But this is any other, whether it's the players or the organization, when things happen that nobody wants to have happen, they say, hey, this is business. Well, it's a business. And it doesn't matter how much Chris Tillman has done for your organization in the past. If he can't pitch anymore, he can't pitch.
Well, they kept bringing Nolan Rimo back, and he couldn't play to begin with.
And Chris Davis, look, I realize they paid him a ton of money. And I realize that they've got him for 4 more years. But he's awful. And it's one thing to say, hey, we need to put him in the lineup because we're paying him. It's another thing to bat him 4th and 5th in the middle of the lineup because why? I mean, and Buck continues to do that, which is just absurd. When there are at least 3 other guys in the lineup who may not be all-stars or Hall of Famers, but certainly you're going to have a higher batting average than 170 and can be more productive in the middle of the lineup. At this point, you're impeding. I think batting Trey Mancini in leadoff spot is impeding his growth. If you're going to bring Joey Rickard up, the only reason to bring Joey Rickard up is to say, here's your shot. Can you lead off or not? Put him in the leadoff spot and see what happens. The time for we're competing in this to try and win a division is over. I mean, apparently it was over about 2 weeks into the season, but it's definitely over now. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that you need to figure out. And there is an approach to sort of this loyalty thing that happens in this organization. And, I know Buck is guilty of it. And the rumors are that Brady is guilty of it as well. And the first thing as the general manager within this organization, if that's something he truly wants to do and is in place to do so, there needs to be, I will not say a complete lack of loyalty, but certainly a more dispassionate approach to the way this team is put together, the way it's assembled. And I'll tell you, I mean, I have a significant problem with the way baseball's going, where the teams are hiring managers that are just mouthpieces for general managers and what they want to do. That, to me, is another issue that the Orioles obviously don't have to talk about another day. But to be in a situation where at every turn these decisions are not, that they're not on the same page with them, they're fighting about it, or the decision is made, well, this guy's been with me for this long, so I'm going to ride it for that. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, Nestor. It really does.
You know what doesn't make any sense? The fact that Pedro Alvarez is getting at-bats around here, right? The notion that they're not going to deal Adam Jones. I mean, obviously they're stuck with Trumbo, and maybe they can give him away and get something to get rid of his contract or some part of his – I don't know. I mean, I doubt that. But, I'm not married to Bundy or Gosman or any of the rest of these guys. If they want to deal guys off and feel like they're getting prospects back, I would always ask the Sid Thrift question when, I'm still waiting for Jacobo Sequoia and, all of those guys from the Will Clark deals and all that, that if they're going to deal guys off here, having someone that knows what they're doing like McPhail clearly did is of grave concern, I think, to any Orioles fan. And I don't know where the building parts are here. I'm not convinced Dylan Bundy's going to be a number one starter. I'm not convinced Kevin Gausman's going to be a number one starter. I'm not convinced they're phenoms at this point. And on the offensive side, I wonder night to night what they're doing with the lineup and how long they're going to continue to give Chris Davis at bats, because that appears as though there might not be any end to that just because of the money. They're just going to keep sending him out there and propping him up.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, that again, it's one thing to say, well, we have to put him in the lineup. It's another thing to say we have to bat him fourth or fifth. I mean, it's just be realistic about who he is at this point. And then if he gets
realistic about who he is, he wouldn't be in the lineup. I mean, let's be honest. If he's just a ball player making $3 million a year, he's not in the lineup. He's not on the team.
Of course he's not. I mean, I saw a stat, and I haven't looked it up, that there are 50 pitchers in baseball that have higher batting averages than him. Obviously not as many opportunities, but it does say something about how low the mighty have fallen.
Well, he's also stopped drawing walks. I mean, his bat speed. I mean, right. Luke has gone through the whole litany of everything that says he's not a Major League Baseball player anymore, no matter what his salary says.
And he used to be an outstanding defensive first baseman. Now he's he's an average at best defensive first baseman. He's one of the best base runners on the team. It doesn't matter because he never actually gets on base. So, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, look, the Orioles, the cardinal sin that they made was not recognizing last summer. We talked about this then, we talked about it afterwards, and we're talking about it now because it was a quintessential seminal moment for the team when they had to look at themselves and say, we aren't good anymore. This team, you think back to 2012, when sort of this renaissance of the Buck Showalter era began. They were young, largely, and talented. And the thing about baseball, the thing about sports is that you can't let a team get old. If you let a team get old and you miss your window to make moves, you get stuck. So they had opportunities to trade players then, whether it was Britton or Brock or Trumbo, and they didn't do it. And we talked about it before the season started. I thought they needed to trade Tim Beckham, who's lost to the DL, last in the offseason because I didn't think his stock was ever going to be any higher, and I know it's not going to be now. They had a window to start moving pieces off before they got stuck with them, or before they had to trade them for less than they thought that they were worth, and they missed it. And now this team is old. Even with the young pieces in the Rule 5 draft, the core of this team is old. And you look around at almost all the teams that are in contention right now, whether it be the Yankees, the Red Sox, or the Astros, the Braves, and the Phillies, who were nowhere a year or two ago, but had made moves to get young and to put as much young talent on the field and trade off their veteran commodities before things fell apart as they could, before they got expensive, before they got immovable. And the Orioles had that opportunity, and they have missed it. Now, you say they can't get anything for Trumbo. I mean, he just came off the DL. If he can get into a groove, he's got a year and a half left on the contract. I think they can move that. I think that there are teams out there that could use a power hitter. They have, if Brad Brock could get back on track, which he seems to have gotten a little better, if Britton can come back and get healthy, they have some pieces they can move. Not a lot of them, but they have some. And then, the question, obviously they need to trade Manny Machado. Yes, they need to wait to have the market develop, and I think that we're probably 30 days away from that happening. But if that's the case, they need to trade him early as opposed to late. And then, I mean, you're right, whether it be Bundy or Gausman, and I don't know if any of them are going to be number ones. I don't think they need to be number ones. I think the rotation, even with some of the struggles they've had, with a team that could score some runs, that could create some runs, get away from this home run or strikeout, never get on base stupidity that they've been going through for the last few years. It's been exacerbated over the last year and a half. If they could get back to that, if they could get some players in here who can create some runs, who can play the game a little closer, if not completely to the way it's being played now, they have enough starting pitching to be respectable in a relatively short period of time. And then here's the other weird thing, and I don't know how much talent they actually have in these young players that are being touted, but even if a couple of them worked out, if you could sign Machado, keep Scope, and I'm not advocating to do that. I'm just saying in the scenario that happened, and you traded off some of these other pieces to get payroll flexibility, to have more room on the roster, then their window to rebuild, their time frame could be moved up a little. Are they going to be competing with the Yankees and the Red Sox right away? No, probably not. But they could be in a better situation. The point is they need to make a decision about what they're going to do. They can't go through this for to the end of the season and say, hey, well, we gave it a shot, when it's clear that it's over. They need to announce who's going to lead the organization from the front office. They need to get some people to support that individual in place. They need to have a plan, and then they need to execute that plan. And towards the end of May, we need to do that. As the organization needs to do that before July 31st. So they don't have a whole lot of time, and they can't keep screwing around with this sort of haphazard attempt to be respectable when they clearly are not. They have one or two versions of this they can do, but they need to do it. And that's, Manny, here's a huge amount of money. Do you want to sign? Okay, we're going to trade you. Jonathan Scope, here's a huge amount of money. Do you want to sign? No. Well, then we're going to trade you. So that you don't have the young core that you could build around, and you need to completely start over. Or if you sign them, then you have a little less to do with a couple core players that you believe in. And if that happens, then maybe Bundy and Gausman are a little easier to say, well, we don't need number ones. But if you're completely starting over, then you open up the whole cabinet, the whole pantry, and say, hey, all of these guys are available, and let's rebuild from scratch and see what we do. But they have about 2 months to make that happen. And it needed to have started 3 weeks ago. I certainly hope that they're not sitting around just waiting to see what's going to happen with this team, because the era for this team is over.
He is Alan McCallum. He is out on Twitter as well as at Alan at WNST.net and writing about the Orioles from time to time. It on a night-by-night basis, it's really difficult to watch, isn't it? I mean, and it's even more difficult for the Bordicks and the Palmers to broadcast without a sense of humor. And certainly Gary Thorne said some crazy stuff the other night. I don't think anybody was watching to even hear what he was saying about $10 beers and $15 hot dogs at Fenway Park. It feels like a little secret society at this point. And this is even more difficult when they're playing the White Sox, who might be as bad as they are, if not worse.
Yeah, but they're ahead of the schedule than the Orioles are, because they went ahead and traded guys away. I mean, they're bad because they're really young and they're evaluating. So, I mean, the White Sox are probably worse than the Orioles, but they're in a better position right now.
Well, this would be where you'd want the Orioles to be next year. Stinking, but stinking with a bunch of guys like Chance Sisco instead of stinking with Mark Trumbo and Pedro Alvarez and Chris Davis and Adam Jones.
So you talk about the broadcasters, and I think if you listen to Joe Angel, I mean, he's being pretty honest. If you listen to Jim Hunter's not. And you can tell right away, who's being realistic about this thing and what they're trying to say. If it sounds like, hey, we can make this happen. I heard one of the broadcasters who I respect immensely talk about, hey, it's not over yet. He didn't say it was early, but he was talking about, let's see where we are in a couple of weeks. Like if we take 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox, like, are you kidding? This is long over. They can't compete with the best teams. It's time just to look in the other direction.
They never have a lead. They strike out 15 times a night.
Right.
They can't hit a curveball. They can't move runners. They don't have any pitching.
Why would you ever throw anybody on this team a fastball? I mean, I don't understand it. So I had a friend of mine ask what he thought about the crowds at Camden Yards over the course of the summer. Like, people in this town know this team's bad and that the season is over. If they continue to approach putting a team out on the field the way they are now, nobody's going to show up. If they do what they need to do and start, and I'm not talking about bringing up young guys earlier than they should be. I mean, the luxury of this situation is that they have time to sort of figure out who should be given a shot, who shouldn't, who needs more seasoning. But if they start making trades, they start bringing in some other players, and it looks like they have acknowledged and are aware of what they need to do. They tell people what their plan is, and they go about that over the next couple of months. I mean, it's going to be quiet for a while, but if they're young players, a new vision on the field that people can be invested in, then people might show up. I don't think they're going to sell out on any regular basis, but I think people in this town can get behind. If they'd gone into the season having traded away Beckham and Trumbo and Machado, people would have been upset about Machado. I get that. But had brought in some players and said, look, it's time to rebuild this team. People in this town I think there are enough sports fans in this town who are realistic and saw what was going on that could have embraced that. It's going to be harder now because the season has already started and this team has...
Well, they've already screwed it up. They've already screwed up the rebuild, and they haven't even started the rebuild yet.
But I think Orioles fans are... I think there is a body of Orioles fans that are sophisticated enough to understand what needs to happen now and would get behind a rebuild if they announce what they're going to do, they make clear and transparent organizational moves.
And by the way, they've always been incapable of doing that as a family and with the old man running the team. The good news is if the old man's not running the team, at least it probably could be done differently than it used to be. I don't know that that's where we are. There's no sign that this is going to be run differently from a transparency, accountability, integrity standpoint. There's no...
But
there's no sign of that, but there is an opportunity, yes.
But there is an opportunity, and I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater because of history. People can learn from history. You can learn from history and adapt and make changes, or you can stay within the same cycle and create the cliche definition of insanity, and then that will tell you a lot about what your fans are going to think of you, how they're going to look at you, and what they're going to do with their disposable income, of which all of us have less and less all the time. The Orioles have an opportunity to get the next chapter of their history right, but they need to start writing it now. And whether that's going to be the Angelo Sons and with Eddie Anderson and Buck Showalter, or they start from scratch and bring in some new people, they need to start choosing and writing today. And they need to let the fans know what's going to happen, or what they are going to attempt to make happen, because it's sports and it never goes exactly, it's like life, it never goes exactly the way you plan. But the thing is that this organization, as bad as they are, they're not completely barren. They have some things they can do. They have to be willing to either bite the bullet hard or make smart, savvy, surgical, tactical decisions. They have not shown a tremendous ability to do that over the last few years. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen with new direction and new eyes.
All right, man, I'll let you rest up here, watch some more bad baseball. The minute that Manny Machado is traded, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. The minute that happens, Alan, I'll call you first, okay?
Sounds good.
You can find me out anywhere the internet is served, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.